300 days. I counted my own heartbeat to measure time inside the congealed dark of the maelstrom abyss. I was chained to a rusted iron anchor, my body suspended between tens of thousands of tons of water waiting to crush my ribs flat. I am Elias, former admiral of the Empire, and now I am only a toy forgotten on the seafloor. Malachi, the cardinal who once stood closest to me, did not kill me immediately. He wrapped me in a kind of life stasis sorcery, keeping my cells from rotting while leaving my nervous system intact enough to register the full pain of pressure. I calculated that each second down here equals a year of catastrophe on the surface. I did not hope for salvation. I was only waiting for a crack in this torture wide enough to end everything. Around me was nothing but endless blue black, and sometimes the dry crack of ribs when the water's pressure shifted without warning. I assessed myself. Lungs burning from thin oxygen, limbs numb from cold, hatred still hot like magma. Malachi would periodically send down a sphere of magical light to mock me. Its jaundiced glow was the only thing that let me see the bleeding scars around my wrists. I understood he needed my suffering to feed his power in the capital. He wanted me to watch my family collapse through grotesque images cast across the water above. You still look stubborn. Elias, 300 days living in the sea's mud. Have you forgotten the taste of wine yet? Your son Sian has started learning how to kneel to me. He is a good child. He knows how to choose a side to survive. You will die by that very lying light. Maybe. But before that, you will taste eternal solitude. Farewell, Admiral of the Void. A dull boom rolled out. The sphere shattered into pale fragments and went out. Darkness returned, thicker and colder than before. I told myself this was the moment Malachi would leave me to die. I predicted I had about 4 hours before the stasis magic drained dry and seawater flooded my lungs. But then I felt the current change. A massive pressure not from water, but from a living thing moving closer. Violet phosphorescent motes flared inside a cloud of black ink. A heavy surge struck off a rock wall, announcing that the abyss's predator had found a chained meal. It was not a fish, not a common monster. A colossal shadow covered me, long resilient tentacles starting to coil around the anchor chain. I felt a hand soft, ice cold, carrying the warmth of power touch my lowered face. Queen Thalassa emerged. Her upper body was a woman of lethal beauty with porcelain skin, but her amber eyes carried the cruelty of 1,000-year ocean. She did not speak in human sounds, yet her presence made the water boil around me. I understood she had not come to eat me. She was weighing my value. I chose not to resist. Anything was better than dying alone in Malachi's dark. You stink of betrayal, and I like broken souls. Do you want breath to stand again, or do you want to dissolve into sea foam right now? I want to see them collapse, she smiled. No mercy in it. I felt her tentacles tighten around the thick iron chain. Metal snapped and crumbled through the deep, the chain that held me for 300 days breaking into pieces. I was free, but I knew I had stepped into a bargain whose price could exceed life itself. Veins along my hands began to glow purple, the sea's authority flooding into my body. I had to keep my mind awake so the abyss's madness would not swallow me whole. The first objective was simple: swim after her. Escape this death pit. I no longer felt the ocean's weight grinding my chest down. The power Thalassa drove into me turned lethal pressure into a cold embrace that was almost comfortable. I swam after her through a colossal corridor formed from the stacked corpses of hundreds of warships, piled like the dry bones of some prehistoric beast. This was not only a graveyard, it was a museum of failure and betrayal. I saw royal insignia eaten by rust, torn flags wedged in reef crevices. I told myself every wreck down here carried a story about the land's cruelty, where rulers would sacrifice an entire fleet just to protect a political secret. I watched the way Thalassa moved. She did not swim like a fish. She glided, 8 immense tentacles fanning the water with minimal effort, laying down streams of violet phosphorescence through the dark. I analyzed the changes in my body. My blood now carried a pale blue tint, and each time I inhaled, new gill slits forming at my throat filtered oxygen directly from seawater. I estimated that if I meant to command this army, I had to understand the Abyss's laws. Down here, the strongest is not the one with the most weapons. It is the one who controls the flow of phosphorescent energy. The wrecks began to move as we passed. Rotting wood ground against wood with a dry rasp, sounding like trapped ghosts trying to scream. Then I stopped before a large fragment of a copper-sheathed hull. Pain stabbed up my spine when I recognized the distorted emblem of a sea lion head. It was the rudder of Leviathan's Pride, the legendary ship of my father, declared missing in a great storm 20 years ago. I moved closer, wiping away slime and seaweed to see. What I found was worse than death. The hard wood was not worn by time. It was torn by deep, brutal gouges. A bitter fact locked into place. My father did not die to nature. I traced the claw marks, feeling an edge still alive in them. These were the tracks of a beast man's talons, but far too large for anything I had ever known. I wondered whether Thalassa was tied to this. Suspicion began to grow in my skull, hot and aching. I looked back at her. Her amber eyes stayed still as the night sea, as if she had been waiting for the moment I would find this truth. The ocean's law is clear. There are no coincidences, only plots buried deep enough. Why is my father's ship here? These marks, whose are they? Everything that falls into this abyss has its reason. Admiral, your father carried a secret the land could not tolerate. He chose the seafloor as his last refuge, but he was not strong enough to survive like you. Did you kill him? Thalassa did not answer directly. She turned, one massive tentacle pointing forward. We stood before a colossal gate made from 2 ancient whale jawbones, overgrown with sharp black coral. I felt a thick stench of death drifting from behind it. I understood. This was the first test. To go deeper into her kingdom, I had to prove I was no longer a weak land human. This gate does not open with a key. It opens with will and sacrifice. The blood of the one who bears the blood sigil is the only thing that wakes the spirit in whalebone. I studied the gate. The coral spikes looked like blades ready to drain life from anything that touched them. I weighed cost. If I retreated, I would remain a drifting soul at the abyss floor. If I advanced, I might die. But I would gain a chance to learn the truth about my father and take revenge on Malachy. The choice had been decided the moment I agreed to sell my soul. I stepped forward, gripped the largest coral spike, and clenched my teeth as I cut hard into my palm. A sharp tear. Blue phosphorescent blood spilled out, mixing with the water and then being swallowed entirely by the bone gate. Pain staggered me, my mind spinning as if tens of thousands of needles were driven into my brain. Then a roar rolled out, thunder under the earth. The whalebone gate began to move, opening a passage into a core zone blazing with violet light. I paid in blood to cross the final boundary between man and demon. I had to move inside fast, before my body finished turning into something that could not turn back. My objective was to pass the palace and seize control of the army of Rex. Behind the bone gate was a reality entirely different. So magnificent I doubted my own eyes. I expected mud and starving monsters. Instead, I faced an ancient city built wholly from white marble, lit by thousands of massive, violet crystal clusters rising from the ground like eternal torches. I was the intruder, the only lung-breather gliding among abyss-born residents. Naga warriors with long spears ringed me, their bodies shimmering with green scales, their eyes wary and rejecting. I told myself that here I was, only strange cargo Thalassa had brought back. In this place, my celebrated title of Admiral was worth no more than a rotten chunk of drifting coral. I watched the violet crystals give off a mild heat, enough to push back the deep's killing cold. I calculated that this light was the only bloodstream maintaining life for the entire submerged capital, creating an invisible pressure skin that held the ocean's weight off this place. The Abyss's law is simple. Light is life. Darkness is death. I understood Thalassa did not rule only through the strength of her tentacles. She held the energy key for an entire exiled kind. Yet that false calm did not weaken my doubt. The blood sigil on my chest suddenly pulsed with pain, radiating a fierce heat like a compass pointing toward the city's center, toward a secret Thalassa did not want revealed. I separated from the Queen's escort and slipped into a large temple hall on the city's edge, where the smell of pure oxygen mixed with harsh metal until my head swam. I found thousands of glass vats arranged in long rows, each holding flickering points of light being drawn into a central device. I judged it was not natural energy. It was human souls being squeezed dry. My heart nearly stopped when I saw a gold ring lying near the base of a large vat. I picked it up. The engravings of my name and my wife's were still there, faint but unmistakable. My wife was said to have died in Malachi's shipwreck. So why was her relic here? Inside the soul storehouse of a deep-sea entity, a horrifying truth flared in my mind and iced my spine. I formed a dark prediction. Thalassa and Malachi were allies. Malachi sank ships above to drive souls down here, and Thalassa used them like living batteries to sustain this marble kingdom. I understood I had not been rescued. I was a high-grade hunter, upgraded by the blood sigil to harvest better souls from the wars ahead. Disgust rose and jammed in my throat. I had sold my soul to the same thing that murdered my wife and imprisoned old comrades. I had to change my plan at once. I could not be the obedient one. I had to be the saboteur from inside, before my own transformation became irreversible. A tearing hiss struck from behind the stone columns and cut off my thoughts. Naga guards slid out of the dark, their spears vibrating and shedding small blue electrical arcs in the water. Thalassa drifted down from the temple ceiling, her refined beauty now looking like a sweet trap designed to slaughter whatever stepped into it. Her massive tentacles curled around me, forming a cage of flesh with no exit. You saw what you were not meant to see too soon. Admiral, did you think I was a merciful god? You and Malachi, all of it is a harvesting game to feed this glamorous graveyard. Thalassa did not deny it. She moved closer. Her breath carried salt and blood. A smaller tentacle lifted my chin, squeezing hard enough that my jawbone cracked. She ordered the guards back, but the blood sigil on my chest erupted into worse pain than ever, as if she were crushing my heart with a thought. I realized I could not resist. Not yet. She needed me for something larger, and that was my only opening to survive. I decided I would pretend submission, wait for a moment to bring this energy core down, and save whatever remained of my son. My objective was to win Thalassa's absolute trust to reach the central soul chamber. Hatred remade me into something colder and more calculating than I had ever been. I hid behind a massive block of black coral and watched blue currents run along soul conduits toward the central energy core. I am Elias, and I will not accept becoming a piece on a monster's board, no matter how beautiful she is. I told myself that if I destroyed this system, Thalassa's kingdom would collapse, and I could use the chaos to find a way back to the surface and save my son. I assessed the Naga patrol pattern. Every 30 heartbeats, they rotated positions once. It was my only gap. I drew a deep breath, tasting the bitter salt of seawater through my gills. I calculated that one hard strike at the connection point between the violet crystals would overload the entire system. The rebels' rule is simple. If you want to drop an empire, cut its lifeline. I understood I was gambling my life on a hypothesis. But the pain of seeing my wife's ring in the soul hall burned away the last of my patience. I moved close to the glowing core, gripping a jagged piece of rusted metal I had taken from my father's wreck. A dull hiss ran through the water as I drove all my force into the largest crystal. The water around me detonated. Blue-violet electricity lashed out violently, scorching even the new scales along my arms. I lunged for the largest vat, where I believed my wife's soul was imprisoned, and I smashed the thick glass with everything I had. A shockwave boomed. The glass spidered, then burst. But instead of a soul escaping, a small, soft body drifted into my arms. I froze, shaking as I saw what I had freed. It was a human child, about 3 years old, sunk in deep sleep. On its chest was a cross-shaped scar. Scorched into the skin the mark of the purification rite the Church of Light often performed on heretics. I stared around in disbelief. Thousands of other vats did not hold the souls of the dead. They held children preserved inside a restorative solution. A truth flipped my entire logic inside out. Thalassa was not harvesting souls. She was saving children humans threw away like trash. My wife's ring was here not because she was killed, but because she used her life to send these children down into the ocean before Maliki sank the ship. Thalassa appeared directly behind me. There was no anger in her eyes, only an infinite grief. Her tentacles hung low, the phosphorescent glow along her body dimming because I had damaged the energy core. Now you see, bearer of light. Humans call me a demon because I pick up what they despise. And you just extinguished their only hope to live. I thought you used them for energy. Human suspicion is always the darkness's sharpest weapon. You did not only damage the core, you just lit a lighthouse that points the way for our enemy. I looked upward toward the surface. A beam of blazing yellow light pierced the dark water, hot enough to boil sea sponges. A concussive blast rolled down from above, announcing Maliki's fleet had found us by the magical shockwave I had just created. I understood my fatal mistake. I opened the door for the wolf while trying to kill the guard. Guilt settled on my shoulders with a weight worse than the abyss's pressure. I had to repair this ruin before Maliki's false light burned everything Thalassa had fought to protect. My objective was to protect the children's nursery chamber from the Empire fleet's first assault. The yellow light from above brought no warmth. It carried destruction. Maliki's spears of a magical light stabbed through the water, burning black coral reefs and turning unlucky Naga warriors into ash in a blink. I stood rigid in the rubble of the energy core, watching the children in their vats shrink in fear as the capital's protective membrane thinned. I told myself I was the greatest sinner here. Pride and blind faith in the past made me hand over this last refuge to a butcher. I understood Malachy did not come to save me. He came to erase every trace of his crime. I watched Thalassa. She strained, 8 colossal tentacles weaving into a biological shield over the nursery garden. Her porcelain skin was now covered in burns from the magical light. Yet she did not retreat. I calculated that, at this rate, her shield would collapse in less than 10 breaths. A commander's rule is to turn the board when everything looks lost. I chose something insane. Instead of trying to repair the core, I would use my blood sigil to connect directly to the souls of the countless wrecks all around us. A heavy crash shook the entire reef wall. Malachy's fleet had begun dropping explosive anchors. I surged to Thalassa and took her trembling hand. I felt the heat from the blood sigil on my chest resonate with the ocean's pulse. I understood I was not only a man given power, I was the anchor linking the world of light to the world of darkness. I predicted that if I expanded my own soul, I could wake what had slept under mud for centuries. What are you doing? Traitor, do you want to finish Malachy's work? I will correct my mistake. Take the children deeper into the fissure. I will hold them here. You will not survive. His light will burn the half-human, half-beast soul inside you. I died 300 days ago. Now I am only a ghost collecting a debt. Thalassa looked at me. Her amber eyes flashed with a faint hope. She nodded. Her tentacles loosened slowly and let me step into the center of the remaining phosphorescent current. A thick roar rose from my throat, no longer human, but the abyss calling itself through me. I drove my entire will into my hands and pressed them down against the marble foundation of the capital. I did not pray to gods. I ordered the old wrecks to rise. At once, thousands of sunken ships around us began to shudder, their rotten wooden skeletons stitching themselves together with sea vines and iron coral. I looked up toward the surface where Malachy's fleet hovered in triumph, preparing the killing blow. I saw my son Sean, chained to the prow of the lead ship like a living shield. His eyes were empty. He did not recognize his father in the form of a black stone titan standing in the deep. A blinding beam fired down, but this time it was stopped by a wall built from hundreds of broken fragments of old warships. I had created a ghost fleet, a legion of darkness to meet the Empire's fleet of light. The true battle had only begun, and I knew I stood on the edge of annihilation. I wondered whether, after I leveled Malachy's fleet, I could still look my son in the eyes in this monster's shape, or whether I would be trapped forever in the darkness I once feared. Will I pull my son off the altar, or will I drown him with my enemy?